is not attached to chores. But let me show you three families from a toddler stage up through the teen years, which, by the way, is where we see the fruits of our labors. A brick wall family hands a toddler $1, but takes 50 cents back and says, "Kid, here's $1, but we're going to keep 50 cents because 25 cents of this we're going to put in the bank for you because we can't trust the kid to. I mean, he keeps opening the bank and counting his money and giving it to his friends, so we can't trust him to handle it. The other 25 cents I will hand you at church when they pass the collection plate around, and if you give it to you before, you'll lose it. And the rest of your money you may spend on this, this, and this, and this, but not on that or that or that or that." Brick wall dictates how you spend it, how you save it, and how you give it with a toddler. I know how to think about money, you don't, is the message the kid gets. The opposite extreme jellyfish model. Once in a while, we throw some money at the kid. Kid never knows how much or when it's coming. But then we give the kid grief. If you hadn't spent your money on all these little trinkets, you could have had money for this big one. If you'd have put some money away, you'd have some money now. But we don't provide the bank for the kid. You know, toddlers can write in a little spiral notebook their pennies, nickels, and dimes. And if they're the oldest child, they don't learn as quickly as the second child does, the difference between a nickel and a dime, because the second child has the first child teaching them. Well, if you let me have all the little silver ones, you can have the big fat ones. You know, they learn. But not in a jellyfish family. Basically, we're kind of throwing money at them and mini-lecturing them when they don't handle it well. But we aren't giving them the opportunity to spend it appropriately and teaching them with some guidelines. We aren't teaching them to save, and we aren't teaching them to give. Backbone family hands a kid $1 and says, "Kids, some of this money must go into savings. From the day you start giving your children money, they should determine how much they save." Children will not save for anything if they don't want for anything, though. And how many of our children today don't want for anything? They don't get attached to a big little teddy bear anymore. They got the whole Care Bear collection. They don't have one Cabbage Patch baby. They have 5. One for the front back, one for the back, twins on the side, infant in the carry-all. It's terrible. We need to give our children what they need. What they want, they can save their money for. Maria wanted fluorescent socks. She didn't need them, she wanted them. And we said, "You need them, we'll buy them, but if you just want them, we won't." She wanted fluorescent socks. We would buy the regular ones, but not the fluorescent ones. They cost a lot more money. So she saved her money and bought 2 pairs, a green pair and an orange pair, to layer, one on top of the other, of course, right? Now, once in a while, needs and wants gets mixed together. Our oldest wanted a new bike, needed a bike. She'd outgrown all the other ones that she had gotten as hand-me-downs. So it was a want and a need. When you have a want and a need, you can go half with them. And we said, "Okay, kid, we'll go half with you. Pick out a bike." She did. A $350 US dollar bike. My bike, my husband's bike together do not equal $350. And we about choked. And then she threw one of my lines back at me. "But Mom, you say what you mean what you say, and you do what you said you were going to do." And so I said to her, "Okay, you figure out your budget, we'll figure out ours." And we started figuring out our budget. And she was working on hers, and before we could figure out ours, she realized she would probably have her driver's license before she could afford her half. So maybe she ought to look for something besides a brand new bike, or at least a cheaper bike. She found a friend who had had a growth spurt very suddenly in her early adolescence after buying a brand new, very expensive bike. And she wanted to sell that bike very cheaply. So Anna saved her money and put most of her money into savings during that time. She wrote letters to relatives. "Please do not send me a birthday gift. Send me money. I want my bike." And she got her bike. But we went half with her. There's a time to do that. But a toddler in a backbone family, you say, "Some of this money must go into savings," and the kid determines how much. "Some of this money must go to charity." And when they're little, you determine the charity. But when they get older, and you get all these "give me" letters in the mail, "give me this, give me that," give them to the kids. Let them determine what charity they'd like to contribute to. And the rest of your money you may spend on things that are not life-threatening or morally threatening. Sugar is life-threatening at our house. It rots your teeth and you die. Then your teeth rot. I know. It rots your teeth, then you can't eat, then you die. And so you can't buy candy with your allowance at our house. But basically, there's a lot of other freedoms. Now, the backbone family then goes up to the teen years, along with the brick wall and jellyfish family. Brick wall family, jellyfish family, and backbone family's teenager wants a designer shirt. Got to have a designer shirt. In the old days, it was easy. You bought one alligator, a lot of Velcro, and stick it on every shirt, you know. It was real easy. But nowadays, it's hard. They don't wear the labels on the inside of the collar anymore. They're all over the front of the shirt. Got to have a designer shirt. Brickwall family says, absolutely not. I am not letting you waste that money on a designer shirt. It is a fad. It will pass. No, I don't care if it is your own money. You're not wasting your money on that. See, I know how to think about money. You don't. Jellyfish family. You want a designer shirt? Buy a designer shirt. See if I care. But you just remember, young man, you waste all your money on a designer shirt. Don't come asking me for any 3 weeks from now when you don't have any money left. I know how to think about money. You don't. Backbone family, kid doesn't even have to ask if he can buy a designer shirt. It's not an issue. From the time he was young, you let him make mistakes when they were cheap. You let him choose different outfits with limits. And you started expanding those limits. And you talked to them about not all sales are bargains and not all bargains are sales. And to look at quality and quantity, and that those two don't always match either. And the kid decides he wants a designer shirt, saves his money for it, goes and gets it. It's not life-threatening, it's not morally threatening. Now we have a problem, though. All 3 kids go to the same junior high. The school is now selling t-shirts, school logo on it. Got to have a t-shirt. Brickwall family says, aren't you glad we didn't let you waste your money on that designer shirt? Kid, I know how to think about money. You don't. I'll bet some of you were raised that way. And you can still hear your parents saying, aren't you glad we didn't let you go to that school? Aren't you glad we made you marry that man? Aren't you glad we... Because, hon, we know how to think, you don't. See, it goes through all parts of our lives, not just the money issue. Jellyfish family. If you hadn't spent your money on the designer shirt, you'd have the money for this shirt. But jellyfish families are not only good at mini lectures, they are very good at loaning money with long emotional, not financial, emotional strings attached. And some of you were raised that way, and you can still hear your parents saying, you're going where for the holidays? And every emotional string they ever attach pulls you guess where. Backbone family doesn't even bring up the designer shirt because it's not an issue. And just says to the kid, darn, sometimes we don't have money for things we like. Does that happen to you? Forget what we'd like, what we need sometimes we don't have the money for. But you say to the kid, I hear you. Kids need 6 critical life messages every day. I believe in you. I trust in you. I know you can handle this. You are listened to, you are cared for, and you are very important to me. Brickwall and jellyfish family tend not to give those messages. But a backbone family, you put your arm around a kid and say, kid, I hear you. It is a bummer. Sometimes it hurts when we don't have money for things we'd like. And you know what that kid might do? He might say, darn, I wished I hadn't spent my money on that designer shirt. But he also might not do that. That designer shirt may have meant so much to that kid that they would forego 10 t-shirts and 6 movies just to be able to have one designer shirt. But within limits, you're letting your kid make decisions. You're listening to the kid. You're hearing him. It's like a teenager coming up with a zit right here, feeling like his whole face is aglow. And we say, oh, hon, don't worry, I had 30 when I was your age. That is not listening to your kid. Nor is, if you hadn't eaten the French fries and the chocolate, you wouldn't have that zit. They don't need that. They need to know that you understand, and you put your arm around the kid and say, it's a bummer. I remember what it's like to have a zit right here. You feel like your whole face is aglow. Let's see if there isn't something we can get that can't cover that up and clear it up, which says, I hear you. We need to listen to our kids. And when they make mistakes, we don't mini-lecture them, we don't mock them, and we don't rescue them. We say to the kid, I believe you can handle it. When do you increase allowance? When the kid can convince you it needs to be increased. Our oldest said, Mom, I need a bigger allowance. I said, convince me. She said, well, I'm older than my brother and sister. I said, that does not convince me. You need a bigger allowance. She said, well, I need this and this and this, and I have big feet. I'm now in adult shoes. I'm in adult clothes. I have more activities. She wrote out a budget. She convinced us she needed a larger allowance. She also said, I don't need it once a week. I can handle it once a month. So she got a bigger allowance once a month. She's handling it. Maria, our layered look kid, has a fantastic facility with money. She decided that if her sister could convince us she needed a bigger allowance, so could Maria. So Maria laid out some things, and she got a bigger allowance, not as big as her sister. She isn't ready for it. She doesn't need it. But she also said, I'd like it once a month. Now you got to understand Maria. You could give that kid money on January 1, and she would have it budgeted out through December 31st, and have money to spare, loan it to you, and keep good records. Joey thought that was kind of neat. And he said, I need a bigger allowance. So he tried to convince us, and he worked hard. I mean, he even got down to the details of he can't wear his sister's shirts, they button on the opposite side, you know? And he got a bigger allowance, almost more for the effort. I mean, he put quite a bit of effort into that, and he was ready for a little bit bigger allowance. But he said, I like it once a month. Now, you got to understand Joe. Joe's one of those neat, creative kids who you send him up to get ready for school, forgets why he went up there, starts reading a book. He loves books, you know? But getting, oh, ready for school, right? Well, he found out that a month is too long for him. And he's back to every other week, and he may be on every other week the rest of his life. How many of you get paid once a week? How many of you get paid every other week? How many of you get paid once a month? How many of you are farmers? Once a year, maybe, right? And some of you who get paid every week, if you were not paid every week, would be in serious trouble. Well, kids are people too. So you got to treat them that way. But you teach them to spend, to save, and to give. I believe what Teilhard de Chardin said, the age of nations is past. The task before us now, if we would survive as a planet, is to build the earth. And I think at a very young age we need to teach our children that everyone else is our brothers and sisters, and that we need to give to them when they have less than we do. We have to share of our wealth. And I want to teach them very young to do that. So they do have to spend their own money and be selective at how they spend it. They need to save their own money and have a goal for saving. And they need to be able to give to those who have less than they have. And then when they reach the teen years, they've done their short-term savings. They need to begin to participate in short-term and long-term. Long-term has two signatures. Hopefully you've been long-term saving for them for a long time. But it has two signatures, yours and theirs, so they don't haul off with their university money if they get upset with you at 15. When they start making their own money, they begin to contribute then. And then you weigh, do you need to begin to continue giving the allowance, or do you need to cease the allowance because now they have their own money that they are out working for? If you have employment in the home, you have your own job in the home, and you want your children to contribute, if you have your own business that you run, you want them to help, you can pay them for that. If there are extra chores around the house, you can pay them for that. But don't pay them for the everyday things. Let them know that we're going to make this place work together without being paid. You increase it so when they leave your homes, they're making most of their own decisions about money and truly able to handle their own money and be very responsible with it. Mealtime. Mealtime should be a celebration, I believe. If we want to teach kids to break bread with their neighbors, we've got to have a celebration at home. And check out your mealtime. Many, many mealtimes are utter disasters. Get your elbows off the table. Stop that. What'd you do at school? No, you can't have that. Yes, you have to do. And the kid says, is this a celebration? We're supposed to enjoy this? Or a kid is put in front of TV and told to eat. I think we need to take time in our culture today to sit down and break bread with our children. My husband and I learned a long time ago, though, that we can't talk to one another during mealtime. We have to talk with the kids. And if we talk with one another, the kids will get our attention some way. So we talk with the kids. And I don't say, what'd you do at school? Because the typical response will be, nothing. And so, boring. And I say, you know what I did today? And they now know that I'm going to tell them what I did today. And pretty soon your kid's saying, you know what I did today? Instead of asking a question. And for the most part, picky eaters come from panicky parents. We worry, worry, worry. Most kids would not have problems with their food if we didn't worry so much about it. When they're hungry, they're going to eat. And little kids probably ought to eat 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day instead of those 3 meals we set them down to. And if you check it out, after you finish punishing them for not eating, they're probably eating 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And I believe we start young by letting them make some choices and teaching them that this is a carbohydrate, bran is a laxative, bananas are not, this is a protein. So the kids can learn to pick good foods. I think once in a while you ought to have a smorgasbord, so if they ever get to a real one, they don't go, oh, look at all this food. They've had an opportunity at home to pick some of their own foods. Other times it's put on their plate. And I teach them to eat well. That means you've got to have good stuff in your house. And you say, I got to get rid of all the garbage? Well, you could hide it if you wanted to, but it's probably better if you get rid of it, or make a run on the 7-Eleven at midnight for that chocolate that you love. But I believe at a young age, if we want to buffer kids from sexual promiscuity, drug abuse, and suicide, one of the ways we can buffer them is to teach them to put good things in their bodies and to like their bodies. So you have them eat good food. But you let them have choices with that food. And you say you want a half a sandwich or a whole. Don't say, what do you want to eat? It's a dumb question. The kid says spaghetti. We say, that's for supper. Why'd you ask them if you can't live with their answer? I say, you want a half a sandwich or a whole? And the kid says a whole. Don't say, yesterday you only ate a half. Why did you ask them if you can't live with the answer? But Joey has often said, I want a whole sandwich. But he starts to eat it, and he says, I'm full. And he's only eaten a half. There are some parents I know who would make the kid sit there and eat when his body has already said full. I want a kid to listen to his own body, not to somebody else's idea of what full is to him. So when my son says, I'm full, I say, no problem, Joe. You can only eat the half. Put the other half in a Ziploc baggie. You get hungry before your next meal. You may eat what's in that baggie first. Now, you don't let it grow, and it is not served as the first course of the next meal. The real payoff for that is at supper time. The kid doesn't want his spinach, we say, no problem. Put it in a Ziploc baggie. He wants to get out and play anyway. It's nice outside. You put it in a Ziploc baggie, and at 8 o'clock at night when he says, oh, Mom, I'm so hungry, you say, oh, good. We've got some spinach. Spinach. If he's hungry, he'll eat it. And what you'll find your kid doing is eating 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day. And remember, you don't treat a kid in a way you yourself would not want to be treated. Next time you go to a restaurant, how would you like it if you sat down and ordered the chef's salad and they said, you only ate the mini last week, you needed a doggy bag even for that. You've got to order the small one today. Again, treat kids the way you yourself would want to be treated. And toddlers who don't like cooked vegetables, when they're watching Sesame Street, let them have frozen corn, frozen carrots, frozen peas. They're going to eat a lot of them and never touch the cooked stuff. And besides, frozen corn, frozen carrots, frozen peas do not taste like corn, carrots, and peas. They taste like frozen. And kids love frozen. So let them make some choices. And at least once a month, have a formal meal for your children. Put out your best. Now, if you have crystalline china, use it. I had one husband come up to me after a lecture, yanking his wife behind him. And he said, would you tell her that again? I've been talking 2 hours. Would you tell her that again? So what do you want me to tell her? And he says, about using the good stuff. She said, oh, but they're family heirlooms. They might get broken. I said, well, memories are easier to tote around anyway. If you think about it, far better your children have a sugar bowl left from an antique set after many, many good memories. Then, after you die, dusting the stuff all off again and splitting it up and saying, do you remember dusting these twice a year? You know, celebrate with them. Lay out your best. And we put the 2 forks and the spoons and put the spoon up for the dessert. So if they ever get to a formal meal, they don't say, oh, look, somebody made a mistake. They gave me 2 forks, you know. I think we have to teach kids how to handle social situations they're going to be in. And I think you can take your 6th and 7th grader out whose manners are kind of messy. Take him out to a restaurant alone, one that has silverware in it. And I don't mean silver, but silverware, you know, that actually has a fork, knife, and spoon. And have an experience with them where you model good manners for them. So if they get into dating situations where good manners is required with eating, they've got it. When they're in social situations with their peers or with other adults, you've taught them the skill. But talk with them about it. I don't worry about teaching kids etiquette. That's what we expect them to do. It's very rigid brick wall. Manners are backbone. I want to teach kids to use manners at home. Spaghetti in the hair is not manners. But a spoon with peas for a young child may be manners. And all of us, for fun, using the spoon with peas can be manners. So you want to teach your kids manners. And teach them about food. And then let them make choices. We always knew when Maria was planning the menu when she was in preschool, somewhere in the menu we had bumps on a log. That's celery with peanut butter and raisins on top. I mean, we've had them fried, we've had them frozen, we've had them dipped, you name it. But let them choose. And if you can say to a kid, hey, guess what? We're having spinach tonight, and I know you hate spinach. Make sure when you sit down to the table, you have an alternative. And the kid has to have something that's going to take its place. And let them go to the grocery store. You say, I'm going to take them to the grocery store every week. You don't have to pain yourself quite that badly. But take them once in a while so they understand, and as they grow older, they can start planning the grocery list so that when they get out of your home, they don't buy a case of stew and say, oh, I got my dinners for the month. You know, we want to teach them so when they leave our homes, they know how to plan and how to cook. I taught my children how to cook very young. I hate to cook. Years ago, I was a nun. Obviously, I'm not now with a husband and 3 kids, but I was once a nun, Coif Gim 3 English yards. And you had to try out for Gregorian choir. And if you didn't make it, you cooked for 250 women. I did not make choir. And nobody ever taught me to break those menus down to cooking for 5, you know. So I figured I'm going to teach my kids how to cook. And one day my neighbor came over, and I've got 3 toddlers on the floor with a big Tupperware mat, and we have cookie dough from here to forever. And my neighbor said, my goodness, they're making a mess. I said, no, they're making cookies. It's your point of view. And you know, they learn very, very young that if you eat all of the chips out of the raw batter, no matter what the picture on the box looks like, there are no chips in the cookies that come out of the oven. And if you eat half of the dough raw, which is not good for you, you don't get 6 dozen cookies. You get 3. Or 6 dozen small cookies. You know, but you teach them and you let them make mistakes. Children need to know it's okay to make a mistake. But watch how we do it with our toddlers. We say, be careful of the glass, don't drop the glass, be careful of the glass, crash, it is on the floor, broken. We get hysterical. You klutzy kid, I swear, you're going to use Tupperware the next 30 years of your life, get out of this kitchen. And what we have just said to the kid is, you're a problem, not you have a problem. I want to tell a kid, you have a problem, not you're a problem. And so I look at the toddler and I say, you have a problem. Go get mom a bag. Toddlers cannot pick up glass, but they can hold the bag. And then when you have picked up the glass and they're holding the bag, hand them a white cloth and let them wipe up the milk. And it won't be exactly the way you would have done it, but it's all right. And they mop up the milk, and then you hand them 2 plastic glasses and you say, which of these 2 would you like to use today? And what you have said to the kid is there is no problem, so great, it can't be solved. The glass, by the way, broken on the floor is not a problem. It is a reality. You accept realities and solve the problems that come with those realities. It's like my oldest daughter dropped my mother-in-law's birthday cake shortly before it's time to go to Grandma's. I mean, I spent 2 hours decorating this cake, and there it is on the floor, smashed. And I had put it on a white cake pedestal, white doily, forgot to put icing on the doily to make it stick to the pedestal. She goes to show her friend the cake, moves the platter from one counter to the next. Platter moved faster than cake did. We got 2 inches smashed on the kitchen floor. Now I could get hysterical. You klutzy kid, look at this cake, what do we get? It would do no good. The cake's not going to rise back up no matter how much we scream at it. But you think by the way we carried on it would, right? No. You just look at the kid, and I said, Anna, you have a big problem. And she looked at me, she said, Mom, I tried to catch it. I said, I tried to catch it, your friend tried to catch it, it didn't work. And the problem is not the cake on the floor, that's a reality. The problem is we need to get a cake to Grandma's. She looked at her watch, there's no time to bake another one. She's not going to spend her allowance on one, and she says, I think I can salvage that one. I said, good thinking. And I think you can help your kid out. She held the platter. I reached under 2 inches of goo. I plopped that cake back over. Now, since we do not live by the motto, cleanliness is next to godliness, we're looking at breakfast crumbs that had not yet been swept on top of this cake now, right? If you walk into our home today, you're going to see a rock at the front door. An immaculate home is a sign of a misspent childhood. Our kids are not misspending their childhood. So we got breakfast crumbs. I didn't have to say a thing to her. She knew that icing had to be scraped off and re-iced. I walked in the other room. She's out there scraping the cake, having fun. Now, you're not supposed to have fun if you're being punished. But do you know what? It's okay to have fun if you're being disciplined. Shown what you've done wrong. Given ownership of the problem. I could have said to her, get out of the kitchen, I'll do it myself. But we've got to give the kid ownership of the problem. Give her ways to solve it. I could have said, we're not taking a cake to Grandma's. That's it. You're just going to have to tell your grandma why you don't have a cake for her. No, you give her ways to solve it. There's always ways to solve problems. And most importantly, you leave your kids' dignity intact, and you're going to feel a whole lot better about it. She's out there scraping the cake off. Her friend is scraping the floor. And I overheard her friend saying, Anna, doesn't your mother ever get mad? And I had to hear what she had to say on that one. And she said, oh yeah, a lot. But not when we have a problem. What I want my children to understand is when you have a problem, what you need is a plan. You got a problem, what's your plan? Not what's your excuse. So in the teen years, they don't say dumb things like, wasn't my fault, she made me do it. Everybody else is doing it. No, you have a problem, what's your plan? But again, it is your point of view. How do you view life? I got stuck in Winnipeg on my way to the Paw, Manitoba. And that's in the middle of nowhere, which if you're an optimist is halfway to everywhere. But it was a blizzard. It was a spring blizzard. And the flight that was a turnaround flight could not get in, and they had to bring another plane in. That plane's going to arrive 8 hours later. You should have seen some of those people carry on. You can't do this to me. I'll never fly you folks again. I want my money back. It is the only way to get to the Paw, right? Roads are closed. They want their money back. Some of those people ranted and raved for 8 hours. Some people hit the bar for 8 hours. Some of us read a good book for 8 hours. All three groups got on the same plane 8 hours later. Some were still angry and ready to throttle the pilot, which would only made us later. Some, after 8 hours in the bar, didn't care and weren't sure if they were even on a plane. And some of us had read a good book. I ask you, when is the last time anybody gave you 8 hours of uninterrupted time to read a book? See, it's your point of view. And you have to look at it as this is not unsolvable. If it's unsolvable, it's not a problem. It's a reality. I work with pregnant teens. And I say, what's the problem? And the young girl looks at me like, you nuts? And I say, what's the problem? She said, I'm pregnant. I'm 5 months pregnant. I said, well, that's not a problem. I can show you 5 women who would give anything to be in your shoes, young lady. That's not the problem. The baby's a reality. What's the problem? She said, well, my mom and dad are kicking me out. My boyfriend won't marry me, and I want to keep my baby. I said, oh, okay, those are problems. And you know what? They're solvable. I was working with a young teenager who was leaving school. He says, I'm quitting. I said, what's the problem? He said, I'm leaving. I said, oh, that's not the problem. I could show you 3 teachers who will help you unpack your locker and show you to the door. That is not the problem. What's the problem, kid? I'm flunking 5 subjects. I said, oh, that's a problem. But it's solvable. I flunked 5 subjects is a reality. I'm flunking 5 subjects is a problem. That is solvable. So it's your point of view. And I want to teach kids that there is no problem so great it can't be solved. You want your kid to come home and say, Dad, I had a lousy date. You want to hear about the neat dates. You need to hear about the lousy ones. They cannot tell you about lousy dates if they can't have problems and solve them. So I want them to understand, you got a problem, what you do is just solve it, kid. Bedtime. Don't lie to your children. Don't tell them they need their sleep. Be honest with them. You need their sleep. And you often need more sleep than they need. And you have to decide, do I want them to bed early and up early, or to bed late and up late? You cannot get them to bed early and up late. It's not going to work. But you as a family have to look at what works in your house. Some of you would prefer, because of the kinds of work you're involved in and the like, and your own body clock, that you'd like your kids up later at night. I've seen people scowl at other people whose kids are up late, and I think, well, hey, wait a minute, do they get to sleep in the morning? I'm a morning person. I like to see them early in the morning. But you have to do what you can live with, and you set what works for your family. But often we make bedtime such a disaster. We say, kids, time to go to bed, and they complain about it. But then we get them up, we tuck them in, we read a little story to them, we smile, and then we go down to have some quiet time to ourselves or with our spouses, and a kid comes down the stairs. Mom, would you come stay with me? Hon, I've been with you all day. Oh, come on, I'll tuck you in one more time. You tuck them in, you hug them. You're downstairs, ready to have some peace and quiet. Another kid comes down the stairs. Mommy, I have to go potty. What do you mean you have to go potty? I asked you if you had to go potty before. The interesting thing about young bodies is they can be running around, especially little boys, running around a whole lot. And you say, do you have to go potty? Mm-mm. But they lay down and relax and their bladder goes, full. Don't tell them if you'd have gone before. How would you like it if you're laying in bed and your spouse says, if you'd have gone to the bathroom